Hi all. Abhiram, at the outset, I would like to thank you for the opportunity and also for the kind introduction that you have given for me. Hi all, good morning. This is Sridhar Vemuri. And the topic of the day is taking charge of your life, effective techniques for emotional well-being. Emotional well-being is an extremely important aspect of one's life to lead a very purposeful life where one not only knows his or her own potential but also to realize that. So the purpose of this presentation is to talk about emotions, about how they impact us, and various techniques that are available to effectively mitigate emotions to lead a very productive, purposeful life. Moving on, this is the agenda of the presentation, where I would at the outset talk about the mental imagery, and also I'll talk about the various coping techniques that are used by human beings quite unconsciously. And then I'll also talk about the cognitive triangle, which essentially talks about the thinking, the relation between the thinking, the emotions, and the behavior. And also, I will dwell deep into the thinking aspect, then emotional health and behavior. Then I'll also talk about the techniques to regulate emotions. Okay. Moving on from there, yeah. So let's look at the mental imagery. So let's start with an example, say a very hypothetical example to be precise, so that I have gone to my farmhouse to rest for a few days, okay? And one day, late evening, I would be precise, where it is still dark, I felt the need to go to the washroom. When I entered the washroom, what I saw there actually kind of perplexed me, kind of zapped me. I was really panicking, and I was sweating. There was sweat in my palms, and then I was about to run. And what that was is this: I saw a snake, and a poisonous one at that, all coiled up and placed at one corner of the room, washroom. I mean. Now, this is scenario one. The scenario two is I got into the washroom. I saw the snake. I panicked, but I safely moved away from it. I was still panicking, but I switched on the light. When I switched on the light, I found this. So in the first scenario, you might agree that you would agree with me that, I went by the perceived reality. I went by the perceived reality, not the reality in itself. But the brain does not discriminate between the perceived reality and reality. It nevertheless made me feel extremely emotional. And when I said emotional, I was fearing for my life. And having fearing for my life, there were bodily reactions like palpitations, sweat in my hands and all that. And then I quickly ran away. So that also determined my behavior. In the second example, that you could see that although I panicked for a while, I consciously took a decision to switch on the light, inspect my, what I have seen. And that's why I had a reality check. So, but in the first case, if I were to live by the first case, I would live all my life telling everyone that I have seen a snake in my washroom. But if it is a second case, then I would already had a reality check. But I can tell you many times in our life, we would never get an opportunity to do a reality check, because most of the time we are so engrossed with our, perceived realities that we have no time for realities. So it so happens. So it is very important that, we should know what is real and what is a perceived reality. And accordingly, we should lead our life. And you would agree with me, moving on to the next slide. So now, let's take a step back and look at what we unconsciously do all through our life. That this is called a defense mechanism. You can actually see there are various things like repression, denial, projection, reaction formation, sublimation, rationalization. There are various other defense mechanisms that are available to human beings that they actually resort to without even knowing that they are actually doing that. That's why it is called a very unconscious response. Why do we human beings resort to unconscious response? Because we want to manipulate, distort, and deny the reality, because we are extremely stressed out to face the consequences of a daunting emotion. An unwanted emotion, you don't know how to deal with it. So you actually distort the reality, you manipulate it, you distort it in such a way that you are comfortable. That's how a defense mechanism comes into play. And you might say that, okay, in which case I'm programmed to unconsciously deal with my emotions through defense mechanisms. What is wrong? The point is that it is a maladapted behavior, and this can possibly lead to psychological disorders in the long run. So what is really important to be conscious about our emotions, to know what they are, to understand what its impact is on our thinking and behavior, and how it can be mitigated. So that collective consciousness in a group meeting like this, the very purpose of we coming together today is to build that kind of group consciousness where it is not only in our conscious awareness, but also in a group's conscious awareness, so that we will be more alert to, with all the emotions that we have and effectively deal with them. Now, moving on to the next slide. Yeah. So, in fact, let's go back to that example where I saw a snake and I ran away. And in another case, I saw a snake, then I reflected on it, thrown light on it, and then realized it is a rope. If you see that, it is my thinking that made me, emote, and it is my emotions that actually, changed my behavior. Yeah, it is my emotions that changed my behavior. So you would agree that the thinking, the emotions, and behavior all intricately connected. So much so that they are, they are actually reinforcing one another. So let us understand this more, and this is called the cognitive triangle. I mean, I know somebody is doodling on my screen. Okay. So now let's get to the cognitive triangle. Let's look at the first one, the thinking. Thoughts are what we think. Now, to understand thinking more, let's get to the construct of the brain itself. The brain has got two broad dimensions to it. For the sake of simplicity, I would like to split it into two: the thinking brain and the emotional brain. The thinking brain is called prefrontal cortex. And before I tell what it is, cortex is a thin membrane that covers the entire brain, and prefrontal cortex is that part of the cortex that is behind the forehead, and it is that small portion of the brain. Just it occupies no more than 4 to 5% of the human brain's volume. But however, that plays a significant role in terms of making human beings a very rational being, and it is responsible for the cognition. And at the same time, it consumes 1/3 of the entire brain's volume. So you would agree that this is an extremely important thing, because it controls your working memory, it aids your decision making and problem solving. And I must also tell you that this is the last portion of the brain that is developed. So this could be the fundamental difference between the other developed brains in other living species versus human beings. Okay, that said, now let's also look at the emotional brain, that is called the limbic system. And it is not one part of the brain, but it is a portion of the brain where there are multiple parts that are there. And so this portion of the brain is called limbic system, and this is responsible for your emotions. Your emotions get triggered, and and you would resort to a fight or a flight response in whenever your emotion gets triggered. So let's go back to the example of snake and rope. There you have seen that when in the first instance, I was aroused by emotion, extreme fear. When I was aroused by fear, what happens is my limbic system gets activated substantially. When limbic gets substantially activated, it leaves very little resources for the prefrontal cortex to have resources. Like when I say resources, I mean it's glucose and oxygen. Very little of that is available for the PFC. So that means that when your emotional brain is highly charged, you cannot think. The PFC does not work. Okay. Now let's see in the subsequent slides how do we actually manage that. And let's get to the next slide. Let's see what the brain does. Okay. Now the organizing principle of the brain is to preserve us, and preserve us from what? From threat. What is a threat? Threat is something that gives us unwanted emotion. So when you feel threatened, you want to go away from it. So that's when the fight or flight happens. Fight means you fight for your survival. Flight means, again, you run away. That's an easier thing to do for your survival again. And when you are in a threatened situation, or when you are in a away state, you are more problem focused. At that point of time, you can neither process the opportunities nor resources available to you. Okay. In my earlier example also, that is a threat situation for me. and I was in a away state, meaning I quickly ran away in the first instance. Now, one example I want to give here is people who have stage fear would generally not accept to get onto the stage. And the opposite is also true. People who have got confidence that they can deliver good speeches are actually looking for an opportunity to get onto the stage. Right? Now, let's move to the left side of the slide that talks about reward. Reward is something that gets you pleasant emotions, something that you always want. That's why it is called a toward state. A reward creates a toward state. You want to go to it, a person, an event, a situation. That is called a reward state. And typically, a reward motivates you. A reward inspires you, and a reward actually gives you an opportunity to review the environment better, look for its opportunities in its entirety, use your talents better, and also it will help you to use all possible resources. I would like to give an example. When you appreciate somebody for doing a good job, and when he feels appreciated, he's motivated, he's inspired to do better. So he puts in more effort next time, and he tries to use all his mental faculties for the good use. So now I must tell you that the brain processes threat 5 times more than reward. The fundamental the principle of brain is to protect you from threat. Brain is not so inclined towards reward as much as it is to mitigate mitigate threat for you. So brain sincerely believes that bad is stronger than good. Okay, but however, at some point, after a point when the brain actually accepts that this much of threat I can accept, at that point the question of your reward comes into play. So brain essentially looks for every situation to mitigate the risk or mitigate the threat, and then possibly look for a reward. That is a balance that it tries to get to us. Moving on to the next slide, and we will talk about the emotions. What are emotions? How do we understand them, right? And how do we know its impact? Let's move on. Now, understanding emotions. What is an emotion? An emotion is a neurophysiological reaction. Okay, what is a neuro? So the word neuro here is derived from neurons. The brain has got 100 billion. I repeat, 100 billion neurons in the brain. And neuron is nothing but a nerve cell. These nerve cells, the 100 billion neurons in the brain, they communicate with one another through a chemical called neurotransmitters. Okay, they release chemicals. And sometimes in conjunction with the hormones that are generated by the body, they actually ensure that we think, we perceive, we emote, and we respond or react. So that's why emotion is considered to be a neurophysiological reaction. So the first aspect we spoke about how neurons play a role. One example I can give you is a dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is released in the brain that is highly motivating. And similarly, there is something called a serotonin that actually makes you feel a sense of well-being. Actually, this is also a neurotransmitter, and there are a host of others. There are also hormones. So neurophysiological. So what is physiological? Physiological means bodily. So when an emotion kicks in, your body also undergoes change. Like I said before, your palpitations, your goosebumps, your sweating, heart pounding, and all that. Those are all examples of a physiological reactions. And stimuli means in response to what are your neurons triggering those neurotransmitters or hormones, and also how is your body reacting. That's how emotions are actually seen. And there are 6 emotions, and I must tell you, this is an evolving science, and more can be found out. But as on today, we say that there are 6 emotions that we have: basic emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. And then there are a host of other emotions, but they are a combination of these basic emotions. Like you can see in the wheel here, that is not just an emotion wheel, but also how the feelings get generated. Okay. And like I explained to you the basic emotions that we have, what the emotions are. And then I just mentioned what combined emotions are. A mix of those 6 emotions are called combined emotions. I would like to give an example. Uh, for example, I uh, I just got placed, and tomorrow I'm joining in a new job. Okay, and so I'm happy that I got placed. Plus, I'm also slightly feeling the anticipation that how do I, you know, be tomorrow in the new organization. The combination of happiness plus anticipation is called excitement, right? So you would agree that that similarly you have a host of other emotions that we all go through, and they lead to emotions. So the fundamental difference between emotion and a feeling is you feel an emotion. Okay, anything that you consciously experience is called a feeling, and when you consciously experience an emotion, it is called a feeling. Okay, now so the 3 elements of emotions are subjective experience, meaning that when for example in a given situation, let us say 10 of us, for example, 10 of us can respond, can perceive it differently, meaning our experience or our emotions can all be different to one stimuli, or all our emotions can be the same to a given stimuli, but to a varying degree and varying dimension. So meaning that for every stimuli, for any stimuli, we all respond differently. So be it in terms of emotion or dimension or degrees. So that's why it becomes a subjective experience. It's very personal to you. And the second one I told you about the physiological, the bodily changes that happen when you experience an emotion. And the third one is behavior. How does it propel you? How does it drive you to do something? That is also a fundamental, element of emotion. These three actually make an emotion what it is. So that said, let's move on to the next slide. Now let's review why is it important for us to understand emotions, and why do we understand how to mitigate them? Why is emotional health so very important? Let's listen what World Health Organization has to say. World Health Organization, and this is said early March, not during the COVID time. So it does, none of the figures that are factored here are COVID, factored figures. So just before COVID has has become a pandemic, these figures were released. So the mismanaged emotions impact almost 25% of the global population. However, when this report was released, there were about roughly 800 million people in the world, which is roughly about 11% of the world's population, who are actually experiencing emotional disorders, and of which 25% of them are in India alone. And you would agree that's a gigantic number. Now, I'll tell you something else. These numbers do not include the emotional disorders that are caused by substance abuse, like tobacco, like alcohol, like drugs, and all that. They are not included in this. If they are also included, the number will definitely go beyond 1 billion. And you would agree it's a big number, right? Now, why do people have emotional disorders? Because of stressful events in life. And stress is sometimes there in the environment, and oftentimes stress is what we create for ourselves. Okay, that is one. Second one, in underdeveloped world and also in most of the developing world, you can also see poor living conditions, exploitations of various kinds that go on. And because of this, there is a high incidence of emotional disorders, more so in these countries. And now you might ask, okay, how do we detect it? The biggest problem for detecting them is negligence. Since we don't think, emotional health is health in itself, we don't consider the ill health of emotions to be ill health at all. That's why oftentimes they are neglected and they are not detected. So negligence inhibits the detection. Even if it is detected, the stigma around the treatment actually stops people to go and seek treatment. However, the same cannot be said about the developed world, where it is perfectly fine to seek help when you have an emotional disorder, and people get really well and back to their normal selves. But if you ask me, what is the best thing to do about emotional health is to know it in a transient stage and work on it. A transient stage is a normal stage where we all go through emotions. And however, a transient stage is a stage where it does not become a transient stage is a stage where it does not become dysfunctional for us. So it is important that we work on transient stage and not on wait for it to become acute or a chronic. So that's why regulating emotions is very important to control our behaviors. Moving on to the next slide. So there are two broad techniques to regulate emotions. The first are called antecedent strategies. Antecedent strategies means the strategies that you will adopt before the emotion kicks in, like at a situation selection level, situation modification level, attention deployment level. And the second set of strategies are those when you employ these strategies when the emotion actually kicks in, right? So let me explain that in the next slide. Now, these are called antecedent strategies, that is before the emotions trigger. Let us take a hypothetical example where X is a gentleman who has been invited by Y, who is his best friend, to his birthday party. But X also knows that Z or Z is also coming there and he doesn't like Z. So what should X do? Now, going by the antecedent strategies, you have to select a situation. The first one is to select a situation. You select a situation basis what it has to offer to you. If it offers to you a lot of emotion, unwanted emotions, you either avoid it or you still proceed with it. Or you choose a situation basis a pleasant emotions that it gives. In this case, what does X do? X has two options, either to avoid the party or he has to attend the party. That's called situation selection. The second one is called a situation modification, where you get into a situation and modify the situation, the external and the physical environment in such a way that it does not impact you adversely. Let's go back to the case where I have attended this, see X has attended this meeting, okay? But he has an option to avoid Z or he has an option to have a small talk with Z. This is called a situation modification. Let's look at attention deployment. Attention deployment means where you focus your attention completely so that the emotional disturbance that you may feel will be completely negated. Now let's go back to this example where after X goes to this party and after he chooses to say hello and have a small chat with Z, he would, after that, he has another 2 hours to spend time. So he would not want to lose out his mojo. That's why he actually goes and spends his time maybe in a karaoke party there, or he would go and spend some time with the magic show there. So these are the antecedent strategies at a situation level, and how do you modify and how do you deploy your attention. Now the other response focused strategies that we have are called suppression. How do you suppress your feelings out of your awareness? Okay, this you do consciously. And this is something that we do oftentimes. When we are angry, we don't want to display our anger and we smile it out. That's called suppression. The second one is called expression, meaning that where you choose to express nevertheless. But however, it's always better to separate the person from the act. So when you're not enjoying a conversation and you feel you have some misgivings about it, it's better you speak it out without making the person as the aggressor. You can always say that, for some reason, I don't like this conversation because I think it has some personal references to me. That's still a polite way of saying it, but you are also expressing that. Now, the third one, the most important of all, is the cognitive change, where you are altering the internal environment, the environment within you, and there are various techniques for that. They are called labeling, reappraisal, and mindfulness. Let's jump into labeling. And labeling, as the name suggests, is called so because you identify your emotion and put a name to it. And then you identify the cause of it and identify the cause. Just by doing this small thing, oftentimes 30 to 70% of the impact that your emotion has on you can be reduced. Like for example, this morning, let us say I woke up very unhappy. I had my coffee, I had my breakfast very unhappily. Then I realize, when I sit down and think, I realize that it is because my boss has appreciated my colleague last night at 8:30 when I had my meeting. He appreciated my colleague and not me. So to know that I am disengaged because I'm putting a name to my emotion, plus to know the reason, many times will reduce the trauma that you feel or the stress that you will feel out of a situation. For that to have, you need to have an emotional vocabulary. And I have just given a small little list to you, although it is not an exhaustive one, but it is a illustrative one nevertheless. And let's move on to the reappraisal. Reappraisal means to see a situation from a different light so that you have a better understanding of it, so that you are better energized to take a call on it. Let's get to the first strategy of that is called normalization. Normalization means when you are going through an emotion, you should always ask yourself whether going through this emotion is normal, is it appropriate to the given situation or not. That's called normalization. For example, when I didn't clear my examination and I am feeling disappointed, I should ask myself, is it normal to to be disappointed when somebody does not clear an examination? And you might notice that here we don't have a solution for it, but we are thinking about an emotion and we are not emotional about an emotion. That's the technique. And all the cognitive techniques, essentially reappraisal techniques, make you think about your emotion and not getting emotional about your emotion. Moving on to the next one, it's called reprioritization. When you are in a given situation, you are worrying about something, you compare it with the list of priorities you have in life. And then you compare what you are worrying with what your priorities in life are. So, so for example, I'm worrying about something, and then when I realize that what I'm worrying about is my 7th priority in life, should I really need to worry about it? You might ask me that what if I am worrying about is the first priority in my life? At least you know what your priorities in life are, and you are actually thinking about your emotions. You're not getting emotional about your emotion. That does a lot of trick. It is almost like switching on that light. I was still panicking, but I switched on the light. But it presented me a new reality altogether. It gave me a reality check, and that's important. Now, moving on to the next one, this is called repositioning. Repositioning means seeing your situation from the point of view of a different person altogether, a person whom you admire, whom you look up to. This is called a repositioning. How would your mentor see your situation? What questions does he ask? Okay, what suggestions do you think he will give you when you say you are in this situation? Moving on to the next, it is called a distancing. Distancing means you become a third party to your own self, meaning that the experience part of the emotion you take away, and then you observe yourself from a distance in that situation. When you do that, for example, when you are in a conversation with a colleague and you suddenly realize things are not going okay, you pause a bit and do this technique. You will then realize that it is you who is actually reacting angrily to the situation and contributing to what it is eventually turning out to be. But generally, we tend to blame others. But when you pause a bit and then see yourself as a third party, then you realize actually you are angrily responding to a situation, and you should actually take a bit of time, gather your thoughts, and respond appropriately. Then your reality will also be really real, not a perceived reality. Now, finally, coming to the reframing. Reframing means see every situation from what it has got to offer you. What positive things can I take from this situation? For example, I'm worried that I didn't get a hike because of COVID-19 situation. Should I worry about it? Or should I be happy that at least I could keep a job? When you employ this technique, you will realize you will count your blessings in life. Yeah. So none of these actually solutionize, but they make you think differently and make you think, make you energized. Now, the final technique I want to come to is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is called direct experience, where you focus only on the present, fully knowing neither the past nor the future is not in your control. Past is gone, future has not still come. Today is what you have. So focus on the present. So be open and accepting. Observe your emotion, experience the emotion fully. Whether it is good or bad, experience that emotion fully. But remember, you are not your emotion. And you should be respecting, loving to your emotion. Let me repeat, be open and accepting, observe your emotion, respect your emotion, love your emotion, experience your emotion, but you're not your emotion. Yeah, so these are a few techniques. I know I'm running out of time, so yeah, let me get to the final slide. So if you regulate your emotions, you can actually have a very wonderful life. And hopefully some of these techniques will be useful to you. May you please use this.